Welcome to another broadcast of the Debra Rufini Show on the ArtistFirst radio network. All past shows are archived. You can find them at ArtistFirst.com. And now, from England, here she is, your host, Debra Rufini.
Greetings from England. This is Debra Rufini with another broadcast of the Debra Rufini Show. Today it is me, myself and I. You have to excuse me though, because I have a little bit of a cold. So you have to excuse me if I keep taking sips of water or having a little cough. It's a change of weather here in England. It's going from cold to not as warm as it could be, but warmer, which is good. We're going on the right tracks there. I wanted to read a little story to you called The Artist Page. Are you sitting comfortably? Okay. The artist was sitting at his drawing board. He sketched through the night until sunrise had dawned. Amazed by his work, he leaned back in his chair. It took him forever, but he didn't care. It was worth every moment to create this fine art. He'd put on his paper what had been in his heart. He'd planned it by thought, this expression of beauty, an exact replica how he'd aimed it to be. He did it for them, his love gift for free. He did it for men, hoping they'd look to see. Taken by surprise with the noise at his side, his studio door had burst open wide. Lost in admiration for the work he'd produced, a group of small people gathered unintroduced. They circled around him with eye level low, in line with his desk to see what was on show. Ignoring his presence, they began to observe. Their ignorance of him he didn't deserve. Some of the onlookers scratched puzzled heads. Baffled they were by the view they'd been fed. Some had their thumb and forefinger on chin, as their confidence certainly knew their finding. As they voiced their conclusion, they began to explain. It's common fact pencils have lead in their vein. Contact in the paper with lead from the tool, a finding here dismissed by only the fool. Causing the paper to mark in the act the areas where lead has produced less impact. We see from the outcome the markings are light, where pressure to paper we find has been slight. The lead in the areas force has been used, the darker the markings, why still be confused? This explanation requires no more thought. You only need listen to what I've just taught. The scratched head observers, they still carried on. They scratched even more with no puzzlement gone. You've clarified all well and good the process, how lead in the pencil produced this our quest. The result on the paper we see before us required an illustrator, in that we must trust. How did the drawing tool meet with the sheet? How did it know how to make work complete? Did it decide on its own where to press? And if it did, would we not view a mess? Impact for darkness and release for the light constructed this masterpiece drawn with insight. And why would it bother to do so at all, if no hand on the pencil produced this fine scrawl? Those who claimed wisdom by their intellect, in their satisfaction, which seemed to forget that something makes something, unlike nothing can do, a responsible something can only be true. The wise raised their eyes to the top of their heads as they turned to each other and with certainty said, "We need look no further, we're now satisfied. What you've yet not fathomed, we've now clarified. Bound for occurrence it happened to be in this studio where we've happened to see. Time is so wonderful it heals and forgets. Time could produce maybe cause and effect." Insulted were those with their hand-scratching heads, mocked without answering logical thread. The artist was sad to see this taking place under his nose while ignored was his face. Small people swabbling, not looking around, to see for themselves who designed what they'd found, to see for themselves the lead in the hand, impacting on paper the love gift he'd planned, to see for themselves what he'd set to assemble, perfectly what he'd set out to resemble. The artist sank deep in his seat as he cried. The opposed had now left his invisible side. His studio door had burst open again. By much taller and the more wiser of men, they circled around him with eye level high, reaching his hands and beyond to the sky. No one was scratching their head or their chin. Their hands covered mouths in amazement of him. Their sheer adoration forgot all concern for lead in a pencil or what they should learn. Two of the group either side of his palms relieved his dismay and his flung open arms. Upward was raised his head, downward glanced, as he saw that the group saw his efforts weren't chance. Smiles on their faces and hands upon his, radiant in love, unperplexed and unquizzed, vast appreciation over his drawing board, no humiliation, these folk were assured. May we congratulate you on that, sir, on this grand piece of workmanship you made occur. We've no further questions, your honour, at hand, as their answers are what your fine art understands. The artist, so thankful and so recognised, stood as he thanked them and their opened eyes. Well done for never a doubt for a stage. You never believed my hand slipped on my page. I managed to do all that without coughing once, but however, I did get a word wrong. I should know my own poem. That was a book written by myself and illustrated by my amazing artist friend Dina Callow. It was supposed to be so grateful rather than thankful, but never mind, I nearly got it right. So, yeah, I wanted to do a show sort of semi-bordering on this, because this is a small book, as you can tell, a long poem, short story, which is due for republication. And the fact that this is being published again has made me consider a couple of things. A couple of issues that I feel strongly about. I think you've gathered before: emotional abuse and spiritual abuse. I belong to a Christian apologetics group, and how can I put it? I'm amazed at the number of people who believe that everyone believes in God. I do, as you've probably gathered, and I do have doubts, along with, I don't know about the majority of people, or, you know, an awful lot of people. But I think deep down my belief is there. I don't know, I'm probably more confused with the route of which my belief in God takes. That's probably where my big questions come in. But just because I have a belief in God, it doesn't mean to say that, you know, I believe that no one else can, because that is kind of, I'm all right, Jack, and I believe it, so why don't you? It's always been something that has been very much in the forefront of the church, certainly when I was going in my former years. And I've never quite understood it, much the same as sexual orientation. You know, you can't, irrespective of whether something's in line with God or not, it's something that just cannot be. If it's part of you, if it's part of your wiring, it's something that you just can't help. It's when it comes to beliefs or feelings, they're not things that we can control. Control, is that the right word? Sorry, is this cold? I'm not really coming out very well, am I? No pun intended there. It's beyond our control, whether it's a belief. I don't see how we can change. I think change of belief has to happen on its own accord, but it's not just a matter of, right, now click your fingers and believe this, like something hypnotic, you know. It's so this apologetics group, there was a thread on this very subject, and I'm going to read this thread to you. Hopefully I can find it, where the person is just, I'm sure, a lovely person, but very, very blinkered to this issue, and it's just hard to believe what they believe, really. That you know, is it so difficult to believe in disbelief? So okay, here's the thread. I won't name any names. I'll just say this chap, this guy, and this is in response to, I think, something posted by William Lane Craig, the fantastic apologetic. I think William Lane Craig is amazing. I think he's a brilliant chap, and he certainly helped me out a lot of times in his seminars and debates. Wonderful guy. So anyway, this chap says, in response to one of William Lane Craig's talks on the existence of God. And it's very much, I think WLC does very much, is of the mindset that we are all without excuse and everyone does believe, but if you don't, you're in some sort of rebellion. So, okay, so this guy says, who needs evidence God exists according to Romans 1:20 to 25? Answer, nobody. Everyone knows God exists, whether they want to admit it or not. Oh, treading on dangerous ground. No. And then someone... actually, this is a very long thread, so it's going to take up the whole hour. I've just realised how long. So we'll stick to, as you know, how Facebook works. Someone puts a comment and then someone responds and then maybe someone else chips in. So this is going to be a long dialogue. So what I'll do is I will now read the correspondence that I've had just with this guy, and where someone else on one occasion has chipped in because it's significant. Okay, so in response to that I put, but if everyone knows that God exists, whether they want to admit to it or not, we're saying that there are no such people as atheists. While I understand that it's difficult to relate to something we can't relate to, there are people who sincerely do not believe in a divine creator. How would we feel if an atheist told us that deep down we don't believe? And then he says, any atheist can claim God doesn't exist, but we have holy scriptures to show they are wrong. They simply don't want to accept the truth. No. I don't have to worry about an atheist asking me that, because scripture shows that we as humans are without excuse when it comes to the knowledge of him and his Godhead, according to Romans 1:20. So me, in response to that, I say, I see what you're saying, but an atheist cannot accept the truth if they don't believe it's true. It's like you insisting to me, so I have to bring Springsteen into it, I'm a big fan. It's like you insisting to me that Bruce Springsteen is sat at the end of my road eating a sandwich and providing me with what you believe as evidence, but your evidence may not be something I see as my evidence. I would feel deeply insulted to be told that I am in rebellion of this fact that I sincerely cannot view as truth. So the guy then says, he names me, Debra Cuppers, exactly. They don't want to believe it. They don't want to believe it. He's not listening to anything. They don't want to believe it, not because they need evidence to believe, but they want evidence to know that they want evidence to know what they believe is true. I know personally because I used to be an atheist. And then he quotes a passage in Romans where he says, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. Okay, so then I respond, but your experience as an atheist may not have been the same as someone else's. What do you think about someone like David Attenborough, I hope I've got that right, who claims that he would love to believe, but for him there is no evidence, in brackets, irrespective of the truth? How can someone be in rebellion against something they would love to believe in? Okay, it's longer than I thought. Then he says, I understand my experience doesn't speak for everyone who is an atheist. However, scripture is very clear in Romans 1:20 that God's creation alone is clearly seen and that he is without excuse. I can't choose to believe that for him. And then he quotes Romans 1:20, for the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. So he knows God exists. His excuse is he wants evidence so he continue to live in sin. No, again, this is so judgmental. I'm not going to let him be the judge, because then we are putting God on trial when God is the real and just judge. He knows 110% God exists. He won't believe it. So we're claiming to call people liars then. So I then respond, at this point you just got to take a diazepam and... So this is me saying, you are claiming that there are no such people as atheists. Anyone who truly does not believe is really in rebellion against God, who they don't believe in, question mark, 3 exclamation marks, because they just want to continue living their own naughty lives, nothing whatsoever to simply do with disbelief. I think this is a very dangerous standpoint for those who are struggling with faith, as it leaves them with little hope. Christians should be of encouragement to the disbeliever, not classing them as a hopeless case. No wonder they don't feel listened to. Part of the reason I no longer attend church is because I shouldn't have said full of people, it's not full of people. I shouldn't have said that, sorry. Part of the reason I don't attend church is because it contains some people, let's say, judging everyone else's walk with God, which has nothing to do with them. It's between them and their maker alone. And then he says, I literally said I used to be an atheist. I know I got that bit. I know they're out there, but if they claim they don't believe in God, then yes, I don't believe in atheists. See how silly that sounds? Yeah, it does sound very silly. You're falsely judging me about classing the lost as a hopeless case. I most certainly do not. I'm going by what he's telling me. I've just responded to him. When did this start to be about your church attendance? This is the thing, isn't it? Because we're going to go on in a minute to about the other reason for me reading the book and thinking about the book again, mine and Dina's book. And I mustn't lose myself and divert here because this is getting quite deep. But it's kind of this whole... When did this start to be about your church attendance? And it's almost like, if I can't answer something, I'm going to put it back on you. As controllers do. It's almost like, and I've just put, anyway, what I was about to say now I've said in my thread, so I can't seem to make the picture any clearer, so I will not respond anymore, as I can tell the conversation is getting heated and getting nowhere. So, okay, that's the answer then, to run away if you can't. Okay, fair enough. Then a lovely lady, I was just about to name her, but I'm sure there's no problem, but I won't. But a lovely lady chips into our thread in response to him saying, everyone knows God exists, wrong. They simply don't want to accept the truth. You should keep your day job as your telepathic abilities suck. So then I respond, sorry, it's difficult, isn't it? So me having to explain the thread because you can't see it. It'd make much more sense if you could see the thread. So then I respond saying, what? Am I not allowed to tell you the reason I no longer attend church in relation to our thread? I am pretty impressed, chap, at your abilities to read into another person's heart. And then I'll respond to the lady, I agree, lady, this attitude is terribly rude, arrogant and offensive. How dare we claim to know what someone else believes? Completely daffy. And then she responds to me saying, speaking for others is always rude, and ends conversations before they begin. And then I say, absolutely, but it's also completely absurd. It's like me saying to someone, I love the taste of chocolate, but I don't like the taste of celery. And the other person replying, yes, you do, because my taste buds love celery, so yours must do as well. Is there anything else? No, I think it sort of ends there. Yeah, it ends there. Just as well, because that was exhausting reading that. But, if we're going to say that everyone knows the truth deep down, that God exists, then we're saying that, as I mentioned, we're saying that atheists are lying. There's no such person. And how can someone be in rebellion against something they would love to believe in? There are plenty of people that would love to believe. I mean, think about people attending church. Think about people attending alpha courses and attending church to sort of find a direction, and maybe they find it hard to. I mean, if you think about it, I'm just thinking about this now. It is a very hard thing to believe that God came in the form of man, lived 33 years on the earth, died a horrific death, and then rose again 3 days later. I mean, yeah, I do believe that deep. When I have my doubts, I think deep down I do believe. But you can understand. But then I've had my upbringing. I've had my upbringing in the church. I've had lots of influence to tell me this is true. I've had a sort of conditioning to tell me this is true, whether it's from my heart or whether it's conditioning. I still don't really know, to be honest. I hope it's from my heart. I really hope so, because I'm in trouble at the end of the day when I breathe my last if it's not from my heart. But there again, I hope that God's big enough to see my heart and see that, why I may have had doubts. And I think of people who have not had the introduction to this. And so for me, this is quite normal. It's quite normal that the rapture's going to happen, and we're all going to, those that have given their lives to Christ are going to be, zapped from the planet. But to most people, that sounds barking mad. And you can't blame people for thinking it's ridiculous. It's not that they're being blasphemous. It's not that they're being, again, wanting to live, trying to annoy God as much as possible. They just simply find this hard to believe. I mean, if I wasn't brought up with this teaching, I'd probably laugh at it as well. So I think that's why I feel quite compassionate for atheists, because I can sort of, when I have my doubts, I can sort of think, I can see how you may feel. I can see how it may feel a bit like how I may feel about a straight woman, a heterosexual woman who may feel rushy over a handsome man. I can't quite get that feeling, but I can sort of see how it may work, even though I personally don't understand it. So it's the same sort of thing. We can try to understand the best that we can with what we've got. And there are those who would love to believe, but for them, there is no evidence, or little evidence, irrespective of the ultimate truth. It really isn't a matter of everyone believes deep down, but they have this heart of rebellion where they just want to do their own, their own thing, live their own dirty lives, living their own ungodly way. I was given this some thought, and thinking about that, I've never met one person who believes the gospel message but would much rather spend eternity in hell than live in life in line with God, throughout this temporary life. Who would willingly want to go to hell? People are disbelievers because they just don't recognise evidence as evidence. I don't recognise rap music as music, but that's not my rebellion. It's just the way my ears are wired. So this is the core motive for writing the artist page. That some of the people in the story who don't recognise the artist are simply not recognising the artist, no more, no less. But the artist is incredibly happy over those who do, and in turn, they're much happier in doing so. I think that's the whole, sort of point of the story, as you probably gathered anyway. In looking back at this book, it made me focus on the broader picture, really. That in the bigger scheme of things, our troubled souls are minuscule. It's funny, isn't it, how one thing can sort of can lead you to another thing. You can have one train of thought on something, and you can be reminded of something else. And I've sort of been in a little bit of, I wouldn't say a dark place, but not not the happiest of places recently, because I've recently just come out of yet another unhealthy situation in my personal life. I'd previously done a couple of shows about narcissistic partners I have encountered, and I don't think, we're all a mixture of good and bad, aren't we? And good people can do bad things and bad people can do good things. And I think there's just a lot of manipulative and deceptive people around. Unfortunately, dating sites seems to be a magnet for when will I ever learn? But dating sites do seem to be very much a magnet for controllers, manipulators, and sadly, some people will tell you anything if they want something, including a relationship. And of course, we're naturally left feeling angry when we've been lied to, deceived, conned. Just a little rundown, really, just to sort of, I am getting back to the point of the book, really. As a same-sex attracted person, as with many others, they would only want to be with someone who is also same-sex attracted. I'm my own worst enemy. I'm someone who will leave a concern hoping it will go away by itself or clear itself, rather than confront the issue, which it's never done me any favours. A gut instinct is usually there for a reason and doesn't usually disappear unless uncertainties are resolved. Uncertainties, put my teeth in, are resolved. And I felt cheated. This person insisted that she was gay, but never mentioned anything about being more physically attracted to women, which was strange. But all the while, coming out with more and more things which you wouldn't really expect to hear from a gay woman, let's put it that way. So, as you can imagine, there had to come a point where I needed to ask if she had only felt that heart rush on other women, not men. But it was always met with a very diverting and deliberate, I believe, response of, well, I've never felt an emotional closeness, which wasn't what I was asking. There are numerous straight women who feel more of an emotional closeness over their female friends than men. She never told me one single thing that differentiated her from a heterosexual woman. And of course it's insane to not know your own partner's sexual orientation, which she believed wasn't an important issue. I think it probably is. I think it's one of the main fundamental issues that you need to... But she was a very private person, and, to the degree of it's got nothing to do with you, but that's fair enough in friendships, but not in a relationship. A relationship, you do need to at least know a degree about your partner. She was incredibly cagey about it. And when your partner doesn't answer a straightforward question, that requires clarification. You need to ask again and again and again. And when it's just met with anger and a reluctancy to answer, then you've really received your answer. They don't want you to know, basically. all in all, the whole experience with this person was a one-way street, and that's not a relationship. Plus, there were many inconsistencies which just didn't add up, which is always a red flag. You know, when there's things that... There's lots of contradictions. You can ignore maybe the more minor ones, but when there are bigger contradictions, certainly things significant to a relationship, you do need to have conversation. It shouldn't have to be interrogation, it should be conversation, but some people, they can't do that. And of course, it starts with a gut feeling and asking questions which they're reluctant to answer, and then of course things come to light later on, as they did, and lots of things came to light, starting with gut feeling. Never ignore your gut feeling, it's there for a reason. Unless you're a completely paranoid person where, you know, you're just turning round at someone coughing, you know, I think most people's gut feeling, my gut feeling has only been wrong, I can probably count a handful of times when my gut... Well, no, if I was given enough time, I could probably count a larger amount of times. But what I'm saying is I think rarely your gut feeling is wrong, because there's something niggling at your... niggling at your heart, saying, something just isn't right here, you know. But anyway, going... Don't want to divert too much. But when I consider all... 4 now of these people, 3 that I mentioned in previous shows and the person that I'm mentioning now, which is still naturally very raw. Any relationship breakup is very upsetting. But when I consider all 4 of these people, each one at some point had a relationship with Jesus Christ, and quite possibly a much firmer one than myself. And in sorting out about this book again, you know, Dina and I have got to get files together and, you know, get them into the publishers, and it took a lot of looking at the pictures again that I hadn't looked at for a long time, and rereading the book. And I sort of came to a point of realisation that we're all in the same boat, no matter how bossy, narcissistic or controlling. You know, none of us are perfect, and I've reacted inappropriately to what I've had inflicted upon me by these people. And 2 wrongs don't make a right. And yeah, you could use the excuse, I was driven to it, I was driven to, you know, tell her what I thought, or but it can be because we've been hurting that we can sort of lash out, and it's not right, it's very wrong. But it can be the result of what we haven't managed to deal with very well. So I feel bad, I feel remorseful for not dealing with... I'm thinking about mainly these 4 individuals too well. But we're all on that journey of belief and bettering ourselves, whether it's someone who cannot believe that atheism exists, whether it's a skeptic, a manipulator, or a true believer. We're all imperfect people at the end of the day, you know, trying to find our way back to the truth as far as we're able to believe. I'm exhausted. This has been a deep one. It's been... I've read a book. I've read a thread. I've had a bit of an offload. It's been exhausting. But anyway, I just wanted to sort of put this out there, because it's all about trying to... Forgiveness, love, recognising that we're all human, we all make mistakes, and again, like I say, as I've reacted against the things I've had thrust at me, the people that have done that, I think in probably all 4 cases, they've had stuff that has been thrust upon them. And so it's been a domino effect. They've had, they say, don't they, hurt people, and they've had people or events or situations that have been very traumatic, very painful, that has been flung onto the other person. And then when it's happened to us, we then fling it back. We're all the same, really. We're all the same. Anyway, I hope the show hasn't left you with a headache. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, much love and God bless.